networker is like a great interviewer.
I'm huge on authenticity, guys. It's a big part of my message.
Claim your local listings and don't get caught paying someone for your local listing.
If you want to be successful, you got to do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times.
And when in doubt, give to other people and don't expect anything in return. But in giving to other people and helping them, it almost always comes back.
It's using the power of partnership, creating trusted partner networks to work with you to make your company be an offer more than just you.
They've done 90% of the work. It's your job to do the last 10% to meet them in the middle.
Don't let the fear of losing be greater than the excitement of winning.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Ask Valor Masterminds podcast, brought to you by Advanced Septic Services and Fuse Networks. My name is Galen.
I'm Joe.
We're coming at you virtually from the BD Local Studios in Tacoma, Washington. So, Joe, for new listeners and viewers kind of tuning in for the first time, how did this podcast come to be?
Sure. So it first started out as a Facebook group page where the purpose was to bring businesses on to kind of talk about different topics related to business, answer questions, share stories, kind of motivate one another. And because we're in marketing, because we get asked lots of questions about business in general, we thought it'd be great just to start a podcast to bring on different guests to talk about topics related to business with the goal of affecting, one person for every episode.
Right. And we've done it for almost coming on 80, going to 100 episodes for this next year. So thanks everyone for tuning in. So our previous guest, we were really excited to have Saba Ali on, right? So young entrepreneur, I think out of Chicago, right?
Yep. Or two-time TEDx speaker on Forbes magazine.
Published author and everything. So her big thing was building unforgettable brands. And the main takeaway was personal branding is growing 100 times faster than like regular brands. So like now with the power of social media, you get a chance to tell your story. And one of the main things was just be authentic, know your audience, and really tell that story of who you are. Don't try to pretend you're someone you're not, right? Yeah. So advice, check out the episode. Today's guest, we're glad to be in studio. Joe, take it away.
Sure. So I know Tara from networking things. And so during conversations, I'm like, well, this would be an awesome person to have on the podcast. Local, and then just a wealth of knowledge. So Tara Reynolds is the owner and operator of Reynolds Benefits Group, operating in Western Washington. Their focus is around helping business owners increase recruiting, retention, and employee well-being through offering robust benefits packages. Tara took a bit of a winding road that eventually led to working in the insurance industry. For over 20 years, she has developed and managed teams in the retail arena with a passion for creating cultures that allow people to grow and thrive. She grew up in a small logging town and loved playing sports and being involved in any and all activities. She went to Eastern Washington University, where she received her bachelor's in recreation management. Didn't even know that's the thing. She lives in Port Orchard with her 16-year-old son. Tara has discovered a passion for volunteering in the community that keeps her very busy, on top of growing and leading a team at work. Everyone, welcome. Tara, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. It's always good to have local guests on and everything, and being face-to-face in studio and not on a Zoom screen, but nothing against that. So before we move forward, something we're really proud of is our hashtag Valor Cares initiative. Joe, please shed some light and some of the details, please.
So it started out right as COVID hit. We wanted a way to give back to businesses, both locally and nationwide. So we thought, what a better way than to kind of create a contest where we get people that submit their applications, and we choose 1 or 2 winners every single month, where we build the foundation for everyone's online presence, which is a website. So we've been doing it now for a couple of years now. We've given away lots of websites, and we're excited to give away more.
Awesome. Well, thanks, and check out our website, askvalormasterminds.com, and our social feeds will provide more info. So now let's get into the podcast. Our Advanced Septic Pump You Up quote of the day. So we asked Tara for a quote, and I'll read it by Sheryl Sandberg. True leadership stems from individuality that is honestly and sometimes imperfectly expressed. Leaders should strive for authenticity over perfection. So that word authenticity again. So tell us why Sheryl's quote resonated with you so much.
So when I discovered this quote, I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I've been doing for all of these years. And I've run into situations where I've had leaders above me that didn't really want you to be your authentic self. They wanted you to put on this facade or portray
Right.
some perfect person so that you could lead others. And I've always found that I get way better results out of my team when they see that I'm a person just like them and I'm my genuine, authentic self.
Right.
Nice.
Because I think probably in the corporate culture where that comes from more is here's a job, do it. We don't care so much about your personality, but these are the tasks that you need to get done.
Right.
And then people can't put their true selves in, right? So they
Right.
don't feel as committed or involved as a stakeholder, right?
Right. And, I've always believed that people work for people. And it's hard to connect if it's just show up, do the job, walk out the door.
Right. Well, we'll get into that a little more. Our Fuse Network's Did You Know segment. So our Fuse tip of the day. Keys to boosting your staff's morale. No matter how dedicated some of your employees might be, you always have others who are simply in it for the paycheck rather than a desire to be personally connected to the business. If there's too much of a disconnect between the way you see the business and the way your employees see the business, morale and productivity could take a drop. Check out the Fuse Network's blog post on boosting your staff's morale on fusenetworks.com. All right, so let's kind of get into this. Our first one. So the topic today is a stay interview. So we'll get into kind of what that is. But before we go, what is a stay interview? So I'm going to read a definition and tell me if it's true or false or
Okay.
if Wikipedia lied to me or something. A stay interview is when an employer sits down with an employee to gather information about the things the employee values about their job and to discover what the worker believes can be improved. In essence, a stay interview is similar to an exit interview, but it's done with active employees rather than those heading out the door. Stay interviews are an opportunity to both uncover what motivates that employee and to also build trust with them as a manager. So,
Yeah,
is
I
that
think that's a
definition
very,
right on?
yeah, very accurate. Wikipedia did you well.
Awesome. So, like people know exit interviews. So, is there a point in time where like stay interviews kind of started, or the first companies that started it?
I actually don't know where it started. I've been practicing stay interviews for the last 10 plus years. But I don't actually know where they originated, but I would say that it was probably one of the big guys. It started with the bigger companies.
Awesome. Yeah, because I know usually employees, my wife works for a big medical hospital in Seattle, and they'll have like yearly reviews. Are yearly reviews different than stay interviews? then?
Absolutely.
Okay. That's what I thought to me.
So
not knowing.
what's the difference then?
So your yearly review, honestly, none of that should come as a surprise to either party sitting down to chat. And it's really just kind of to say, here's a recap and here's hopefully your pay increase for next year. Whereas a stay interview, these are happening throughout the year. And it's really just an open forum to give the employee an opportunity to give some feedback.
Okay. We'll get into that a little bit more. Please don't go, stay. So this survey conducted in March among approximately 100 human resource executives found that 27% of companies were already conducting stay interviews to reduce turnover, and another 24% of respondents indicated that they plan to implement such interviews. So these companies, so 27%, roughly 1 in 4, and then 1 in 4 who are planning it. What are the things that hold companies back? Because it sounds like it doesn't take much from an HR perspective to do,
Right.
but they don't, aren't utilizing that tool or,
Yeah.
play.
Well, I mean, I think some of the things are a feeling that there's not much value because the employees aren't going to be honest with you. If there is a problem, they're not going to tell you that there's a problem. So I think that is a stigma that would get in people's way. The other one that I hear so much is, well, we're far too busy. We're too busy to work that into what we're already doing.
Well, but if you're too busy and then you start losing people and you have no idea why you're losing people, the importance of that stay interview is just to kind of almost get feedback from where that person is at. Like, this is why I'm working at the company. This is like what my goals are on a business level or personal level. So hopefully those two things line up. And so if you're doing those stay interviews, I feel like each person may have a different goal then. Because in the world of sales, it's right?
Production.
Everyone has the same
Quotas.
goals, and everyone needs to hit your quotas. But every person works differently. They're working at their job for a different reason. They have different goals. Maybe some people are not motivated by money, and they're motivated by time off or different things. So I think the state interviews could help with kind of finding those things out.
Now, with is it different companies that apply this kind of stay interview? Because we have a lot of our audience are entrepreneurs, small business owners that may not have the office environment where it's not the white collar world. You know, it's like
Right.
we have home service industries and everything. Does this apply to those businesses too?
Absolutely. I started doing stay interviews in the retail industry, but it can be applied in any type of industry, really, because what it boils down to is, culture is intentional. And if you have a great culture happening at your company, you need to be talking to your people to find out why it's great. Why are they perceiving it as a great culture? The other part of that is that if there's things that need to be course corrected, that's, again, intentional, deliberate. Like, you need to consciously listen to your people and hear, what, these are the things that would cause someone to want to leave working here, or this is why they wouldn't recommend us to someone that they know is a great place to work. So it could, whether you're working remotely or in person in an office or in work boots, I think having that open dialogue intentionally is important.
Awesome. The cost of keeping versus replacing. So we hear this because it's, as much as if the unemployment rate is up or down, there's still people looking for people, like in the trades and some of our clients and everything. But let me read this stat. So the Society for Human Resource Management reported that on average, it costs a company 6 to 9 months of an employee's salary to replace him or her. So for an employee making $60,000 a year, that comes out to be $30,000 to $45,000 in recruiting and training costs. So it's not cheap. It's not like a dime a dozen. You're going to put an ad on Indeed or wherever you put it, and then I want to get it filled. Retaining key employees is key then, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everyone we know right now is hiring, right? There's some opportunity out there. They're calling it, it's the employees market. It's not the employer's market for hiring right now. So yes, I don't know a single business owner who wouldn't rather keep their good people than try to find someone new.
Because I've seen in a couple clients, I won't name who they are or name what industry, but some of their employees are getting poached. Like, here's what you're making. I'm going to offer you this much more, this time, whatever it is, this time off, whatever is important to you. Is it a point then too for the employee to say on this stay-in interview, like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I like working here. These other companies are trying to poach me. Can you renegotiate your kind of deal? Is that a good practice?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some of the stay interview questions, one of them is, when was the last time you considered leaving?
Oh.
And why? And, you may find out that it's not anything to do with culture. It might be a pay issue. It might be a benefit that's available. It might be a better work-life balance. So, or it could ultimately be a pay issue, right? But at least then it's in your hands to decide, well, can I do anything to prevent this now before I'm going to spend that, 6 months of salary trying to train someone new to do
and
their
that's
job.
not even guaranteed.
Right.
Because then if you hire a temp, there's temp agencies like an assistant, like virtual assistant. Sometimes it's not the same as hiring someone in the building. So we'll get into that a little bit more. So the stay-in interview. So we really want to pick your brain to our audience, people out there. So if you're on the employee side or the employer side, like best practices or things what not to do. So however you want to start, we'll turn over to Tara and please share your insight.
Yeah, well, to what I said earlier about culture being intentional, these need to be things that are scheduled. So it needs to be a routine within your company so that it doesn't come across like a gotcha.
Right.
Hey, Galen, sit down with me right now and tell me, when was the last time you thought about leaving the company? like, whoa, that's going to put them on the defensive. That's going to, you know,
Yeah.
be like,
Let me go to
why-
the lunchroom and ask everyone else, right?
Yeah,
What they
it's-
think. Yeah.
right. And it's definitely not creating the vibe of this is a safe place. Let's talk about it,
Right.
right? So first and foremost, it needs to be routine and a part of, and how often is going to depend on the industry and, you know, what you're doing. But I would say some triggers would be if you've added new people to the team, you know, 30 days or so, that you're getting a chance to touch base with some of your key players that were already in position.
Yeah.
Kind of figure out, because what can happen as we add new people to our teams is it can shift the culture.
Yeah.
Right.
And by the time we recognize it, because it's now showing up in results, it may be too late. We may have kind of shifted in a way where people are unhappy and they want to go look somewhere else, or
Right.
they're being poached, and although they'd never considered leaving before, now they're like, well, I
You
think
gave me a reason to start looking.
yeah.
right?
So I think that when we are adding new people to the team, finding a time after that where we're touching base with our key players. I think it's pretty normal that we have touch bases with our new team members 30, 60, 90
Yeah.
days. I think that's pretty commonplace. But how are we seeing how the rest of the team is gelling and vibing and working together with that new player? I think that's super important, especially since, I mean, a lot of the audience of who we're talking to right now are small business owners. We're not talking thousands of employees,
Right.
right? So I think that that's a really great time.
Do they have to bring in HR?
I mean,
If it's just a state interview, it's just two people talking about this is like, how are you liking it? And they give their answer. And as you know, like the question you asked, like, is HR have to be there?
no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that would depend on the company and maybe even the sensitivity of what they do for work. But I would say
All
in most situations, no. The person who leads that team really should be able to have that conversation
Okay.
with those people.
So to businesses who haven't done it or don't understand how to do it, is it hard to do? How long should it be? Are there some, if they are not in a position to hire an HR agency or someone like yourself to do that, what are some things to get them started to, start framing this, based on, it depends on your industry and your job, but are there
For
things you
sure.
could share? Some
Well,
tips?
I mean, honestly, the World Wide Web is a great place to get started. Do a little bit of research ahead of time, kind of understand what are the different types of questions and pick through them, and what would feel comfortable for you to ask your people and what wouldn't feel comfortable, types of situations. But really find that person that you've already got a strong connection, trust, and rapport with, and have them be your first one, right? Like, make it a little easy on yourself the first go round.
All right.
Someone who you feel pretty confident is going to give you open and honest feedback and dialogue, and then kind of build from there. If you find yourself running into a situation where people aren't opening up when you're having a stay-in interview,
Yeah.
you probably don't have the trust and rapport that you thought you did, right?
Because usually business owners will have that one or two people that they could count on. Just, hey, let me borrow your ear for a second.
Yep.
What do you think of this?
Yep.
So it's not a formal scheduled stay interview, but
For those people who are not going to be open on a stay interview, you could do something like a polling where you just send them a form to fill out. It's anonymous, and you get the feedback you need still.
You absolutely can do that. And, I've worked for big companies that have done that 100%, and those are anonymous, and you can be pretty brutal if you need to be brutal with your truth at that point in time. I think it's important after that you take action on the feedback that you were given, right? And no, of course, we cannot do everything that every single employee
Right.
wants.
No,
right?
I want a
To
month
ma-
of vacation.
Right.
I mean, that's unrealistic.
I want
right?
catered lunches every day. I
Yeah.
want free gym membership for my whole family, whatever the case may be. Like, we're not going to be able to do every single thing that they want us to do. But the important stuff, the stuff that really is impactful to the work that you're trying to do, like, are we taking advantage of that? If you continuously get feedback that someone in your organization is maybe toxic, is a problem, obviously, like, if Galen, if you're the problem, Joe's never going to know that I'm having conversations with you to course
Right.
correct that behavior. But if you continue to be the problem and nothing ever changes, Joe's going to be left to think, well, I told them and they didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? So, of course, they're not going to know if you had a corrective conversation with someone, but are we starting to see a different kind of performance? Are they showing up in a different way, right? So were my concerns addressed?
So what who does these stay interviews? So is it like the person you report to, so one level up, or do you go 2 levels up? Is it like the general manager, the president of the company, or the HR person, or if you don't have that person, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. In my leadership lifetime, I always try to create a connection with every single person on my team to where I was the one who was able to do those with anyone on my team. But it is important that the people, the managers under me are able to do that with their direct reports as well.
Okay.
So I think it's situational. If you've got a work crew that is out working closely together every day, someone in the trade, something like that, I think it's important that whoever's running that crew be able to have those conversations. But then the big boss too, able to come in and kind of have those conversations. I think sometimes if we pass everything off to an HR representative, it can lose some of the connection.
Too formal, or too scripted almost.
Yeah, it's pretty scripted, pretty formal. And I mean, a stay interview can be scripted. You can have your set questions that you ask, but it also needs to come across genuine. And as I'm not doing this because it's a box I have to check on my weekly schedule, but I'm doing it because I care about the team.
Right. Well, you mentioned questions. What are some maybe like 2 or 3 basic questions that are asked in a stay interview?
Yeah, definitely. If I was sitting down with you, Joe, I would ask you, what makes you excited to come to work every day? And hear what you have to say about that. And what are the parts of your job that you kind of dread? Find that out too. And it might be the dumb stuff. I don't like paperwork. So yeah, I'm going to dread the paperwork, but I got to do it. Right. So it may not be a big deal, but at least you can find out. And then asking them, what would make you think about leaving? When was the last time you considered leaving? I brought that one up earlier. Depending on the situation of really what you're trying to uncover, it may be more personal. So, what about your work gets you motivated every day? What about the company gets you motivated every day? So there's different types of questions. There's a ton. You can Google online, stay in interview questions and 21 top questions, right? And then you can kind of scale it down to what works for you. Those are some of the ones that I really like to ask. And, what is missing from your work, if anything? Find that out. And would you recommend us to someone else who was looking for work, that they come and work here? So I think those can be a small little sample of some good, solid ones.
Are there questions you shouldn't ask?
Are you going to quit? I mean, yeah.
Just the big one then.
I just think coming in.
So real quick, I want to break that down a little bit. So not, are you going to quit? But open-ended questions or like multiple choice or yes, no questions?
A combination for sure. I think the more open-ended, the better, right? If I'm just saying, are you happy here, Joe? Yeah. Yes, I'm happy. Yes.
Would a question like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about the company be like an effective question?
Yeah, it absolutely can be.
And can you use that to build like a company morale score then? Like you say, oh, our front level workers gave us a 6, office people gave us a 9. Where's the
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I think that can be really important, especially if you have different classifications of workers, of understanding is maybe your office staff is really, really happy, you know, but
because they get free lunch. No.
Right. Or,
who knows?
Joe and I were chatting about, I said that every business should have an office dog. I mean, if I'm in the office and we've got an office dog, I'm probably pretty happy, right? Because I got to pet the dog. But maybe the people that are out in front of your customers, maybe they're having a different experience, right? So I think that is fair. I think sometimes that's more of like that survey kind of a situation that Joe had mentioned earlier, where maybe we do an anonymous survey where they're able to just kind of give that feedback. I think that is important too, especially when you start looking at bigger number of employees, right?
Right.
Smaller group of employees, you're probably having these conversations like just pretty regularly, face to face.
Right. So the frequency, is there a recommended frequency, or is it based on the kind of company? Is it quarterly, twice a year? Obviously, it's not once a year because you want to get feedback. But
right. I think at least twice a year. Outside of the performance review time frame, right? So a lot of companies, they do performance reviews in like the April area because they've wrapped up the last year finally.
Right.
Well, you're already well into this year before you're going to get feedback on your last year. So I think that, I feel like starting a new year fresh, January, February kind of time frame is a great time to really start talking with people about where they're at, where their head's at. And then again, so if I'm doing January, February, I can do August, September as another great time frame
For a check-in, yeah.
Yeah, and chances are if you're spacing it out 6 months there, you can put them where it's not necessarily your crazy time of the year, right? You can quarterly is another great one, depending on how big of a team you have, how much of a time consuming process it's going to be for you to get through them all.
All right, so last 2 questions I have. So based on your experience, what industries do stay industries well?
I think that in my experience, there are some retailers out there that are doing stay interviews well, and they have, when you meet people that work for them, you find people with really long tenures. They've been there for a long time because they are doing it well. I worked for a few in my past life. I think that tech companies can do it really well. They can also kind of miss the mark too. But I think that there are a lot of tech companies out there that are doing it well because the IT world, I think, is one of those. They're getting poached a lot.
Oh, it's
right?
competitive, right?
Very competitive.
Right.
Like someone's going to jump ship for $2 an hour. So
Right. And is there an industry that doesn't do it well that you see an opportunity? Maybe that who are the businesses you want to talk to then, like for opportunity wise?
It's everybody, honestly. But if you think about some of the service industry, if you think about the trades, a lot of times blue collar, there was a point in time where you could find somebody to fill that blue collar role a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
If you had a mechanic position open, there was 50 trained mechanics ready to take it. That's not the world we're in anymore, right? And so I think that blue collar industries can do a much better job of connecting with their people on that kind of a level and treating them more like they're not as replaceable as maybe they used to be.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
is there anything else you didn't share that you want to share?
Oh my goodness. I don't know, probably think of 100 things while I'm driving home. But I just think it's important for businesses to consider different ways that
I remember what I had.
Oh.
So is there a stat or like what percentage, if you conduct stay interviews, do you increase retention? That's what I was thinking of.
Ooh, I actually don't know that number, but
Since I'm a stat geek, so.
Yeah, I will tell you as someone who has done stay interviews, something that I was always incredibly proud of and always have been incredibly proud of is I have strong retention.
Okay.
I have people that would follow me anywhere to come and stay and work in the organization that I was working at because I was listening to them. So I can't say a statistic, but I can tell you that
it works.
When you do it and you do it well, people want to work with you.
All
yeah,
right.
I could see that as a leadership fault is people who don't listen to their
Well, if you have the blinders on,
right,
or the earmuffs on, you can't hear what's
especially in a
around
corporate
you.
world. You have this is your goal, this is and then you divide up the goals, and then you can care less if that person doesn't hit it.
Which I would think would be harder in the stay-at-home world to really get feedback. You have your Zoom self, and then your work, whatever. You're away from work.
But at the
self.
end of the day, people do work for people, like I said earlier, and it's important, even more important now. I think that as the world shifted coming out of the pandemic, during the pandemic, people spent a lot more time evaluating what am I willing to put up with for a paycheck, right?
Yep.
Right.
So I think it's more important than ever that as business owners, as leaders within the business industries, that we're consciously trying to make it a place that people want to work.
Awesome. So we'll have Tara's contact information. You guys could, if it's okay for them to ping you and
absolutely.
reach
Can you
out
do
to
a plug right now for yourself? How do people get a hold of you?
Well, they can get a hold of me on LinkedIn. You guys will have my my LinkedIn contact information. Tara Reynolds is probably the best way if we're talking about social media. But you can shoot me an email too. Email address is tara.reynolds@combine.com.
Awesome. So before we go, one last plug for our hashtag Valor Cares initiative, Joe.
So 2023 is coming up here in a few weeks, and if your website sucks or you don't have a website, we'd love to chat to try to help get you a free website built.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks to our guest Tara in studio. This
Thank
is
you.
so awesome. The
Thanks for
dynamic
having
is
me.
just so cool when it's in person and everything. So on behalf of our sponsors, A Advanced Septic Services and Fuse Networks, my name's Galen.
I'm Joe.
Coming at you virtually or from the real life studio of BD Local in Tacoma, Washington. Tim, our engineer, just gave him a laugh. So yes, thanks for tuning in and watching the Ask Valor Masterminds podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.